السيدات والسادة، أهلاً بكم ومرحباً في متحف المستقبل. يسرنا أن نستكمل معكم جلساتنا لليوم الأول من منتدى دبي للمستقبل، والآن مع جلسة نقاشية بعنوان ماذا يحدث لو لم نستشرف المستقبل؟ وتستضيف إيمي ويب الرئيسة التنفيذية لمعهد Future Today Institute، وسعد خلفان بلهول الرئيس التنفيذي لمؤسسة دبي للمستقبل. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the main sessions of the Dubai Future Forum. Starting now, a fireside chat titled Making the Case, Which Way to the Future, featuring Amy Webb, CEO of Future Today Institute, and His Excellency Khalfan Belhoul, CEO of Dubai Future Foundation.
All right. Bismillah. Good afternoon, everyone. Good to see you all. I'm amazed that we still have a full house at 3:20 p.m. with probably 60% of the people here jet lagged coming from all over the world. So we truly appreciate that. Amy included. Thank you for that, Amy. Appreciate it. This session will be a casual session. We kept it open with the different conversations and different questions. And we have also given you the chance to participate through the Mentimeter that I believe should be behind me. Yes, so feel free to scan the QR code to give us your opinion. So we'll go question by question. But my question for you first is, how's your jet lag, Amy?
It's better than when you asked me 2 days ago, I think.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Good. But good to see you. And I think maybe I'll hand over to you first, and then we can go one by one.
Absolutely. Well,
Right.
while everybody is still scanning the code, let me just start by saying, well, first of all, thank you for your friendship and for your leadership. There is nothing at all like this in the world. There's nobody else gathering people who are so dedicated to thinking about and planning for the future. And without your leadership, this would not be happening. So I just want to say thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you a question, if that's
Sure.
okay. The role of government in innovation, should it be more hands-on or hands-off from your point of view?
Okay, maybe before that, I'd like to also counter-respond to what Amy has said, and I'd like to say that Amy honestly was a key driver of this initiative, being with us from the first version of the Future Forum. She's part of the network that we have built, which is the Global Future Societies, and she's definitely one of the main sources of foresight that I personally rely on to, and I actually learn from her. So if you don't mind giving her a round of applause as well. Thank you, Amy. Appreciate it.
All right, now answer the question.
Yes, the question is hands-on, hands-off, you said? Okay, so in my opinion, and given the nature of the government that we work in, it'll be hard for me to say that we are a pure hands-on government. We're blessed to have leaders here that literally, and this is I'd say a secret sauce, but it's no longer a secret anymore. I think this is the recipe of success when it comes to the super fast evolution of this country that, Amy, many people do not even realize that this is a country that's just 50 plus years old. And I don't want to disclose how old I am, but I'm almost as old as this country. And I've literally witnessed the evolution of this country from it being a desert to it becoming a very diverse city, and I'll tell you a secret. When I went to Boston, Amy, back in...
Let's not say one.
Okay. Back sometime, people used to ask me, where are you from? And I'll throw in a hint, but by that time, the unfortunate thing is that in order for me to refer to Dubai back then, I would have had to refer to unfortunate circumstances here within the region, whether it being the Gulf War or other conflicting issues within the region. So I'd say, you know, this country and this country, we're a small city or a country next to it. Fast forward now, when you say you're from Dubai, It's either, wow, I've been there, or wow, I've heard so much, I want to be there. So I think so much, going back to your answer, and I promise you I'll be very fast, I'm wary of the time, but I think governments, successful governments, are not governments that run the show, it's governments that enable the show. And that's the balance between being enabling to the private sector, enabling to the innovators. You cannot be completely hands-off, Amy, because policies constantly change and sectors are constantly disruptive. So how do you really create an inclusive effort where you're enabling innovation, enabling regulation to be amended as fast as possible, and working so close with the private sector, which clearly own so much in this world when it comes to the value of the data or assets or technologies that they own. So the short answer is it's a joint, not hands-on, hands-off, but more of an enabling effort.
I think that's right. Can I just highlight one
course.
thing that you said? So the place that we are all in right now, yes, the museum, but the geographical location where we are at is literally the product of strategic foresight. It was a handful of people had a very long-term vision of what this place could be, and then created a strategic plan, and then acted on it. In a lot of governments around the world, foresight used to be a core part of what they did, and it's just not anymore. It's certainly not in the United States. We had something called the Office of Technology Assessment, which doesn't exist anymore. It kind of got filtered into other places, but I think their government needs to play some role in long-term planning.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you, Amy. So I'll jump into your question. How can organizations balance the pressure for immediate returns with the need to invest in long-term innovation?
So I come back to having a strong vision, being agile on how to get there, but mostly having a process. We were working with an organization a handful of years ago that had a huge global corporation that had decided to take the savings that it had gotten from improving margins and putting that back into R&D. The problem is there was no mandate for what that R&D or innovation roadmap was going to look like. And in an absence of that and some changes in leadership, it was much easier to take that money and just keep it or put it back towards OpEx. So we're living in incredibly challenging times right now, as we all know. And the focus, whether you're in the public or private sector, has really shifted from much longer term to the next few quarters. And the problem with that mindset is that the future is going to show up whether or not you want it to. And if you don't have a plan, then that innovation is always going to feel like something that is nice to have or extra. It's going to be the easiest thing to cut if you become margin constrained, which means that you have to have a plan, you have to have a process, and that process has to be accepted by and championed by the executive leadership team in, again, public or private sector, and then that has to be part and parcel of what every department across the organization is doing. So it sounds kind of boring in a way, but the truth is, without that process in place, everything eventually falls apart.
And I'll tell you, Amy, for us, the process took years for us to really actually, I wouldn't say perfect now, but we've went through a lot of iterations when it comes to how does a process work for a future foresight entity. And when His Highness came up with the idea of setting up an entity that institutionalized future foresight, I'll be very frank, we had no clue where to go and what to do, because it wasn't like we were actually able to benchmark or look at other entities that were widely available. Yes, Amy was pioneering the process, but at that time we were actually looking at how can we really benchmark. And fast forward now, what we have here at the moment, this convening, and I mentioned it yesterday at the dinner, this for us is the fuel of everything. This is the catalyst. This is where we actually get the download of ideas and conversations that converts into action items. And that's why the Dubai Future Forum becomes, it's an important vertical of Dubai Future Foundation, because it gathers everyone, we have the conversation, and then to your point in your presentation in the workshop when was that? Yesterday? This time flies by. Yeah, yesterday morning. Was it yesterday morning?
Yeah.
Yes. So when you said then we do something about it. So what we do is in different ways and forms. It could be investments, it could be accelerators, it could be programming, it could be education. But this is the start, this is the conversation, and then we create a process for it to actually do things about it.
So that works well because His Highness, the mandate came from His Highness. The problem, I think, in a lot of organizations is that it just doesn't feel urgent, and I think there's been too little emphasis on tracking your efficacy, which is my way of saying you got to have data. And without data to prove out, in the absence of a strong mandate from a leader who's going to stick around, you have to have some way to measure the effectiveness of what you're doing. And that's challenging when what you're doing is the future. Yeah. And the way to know that you've done a good job is the bad thing didn't happen. Or years from now, the future that we wanted showed up. So that's a challenging thing to do, but it can be done. You just have to figure out other things to measure and build more quantitative aspects into the process, which is a little controversial, but quite honestly, that is what's required in a lot of settings.
Absolutely, absolutely.
All right, question for you. So what do you think some of the biggest risks are associated with the very fast pace of technology advancement?
So for me, it's the risk is not the speed. The risk is how well you can actually adapt to it and what kind of environment you can create to test it. I've always challenged many by saying that no matter how fast or how agile you are, and I'm betting even with my colleagues at DFF saying that there's no chance that you can be at par with the speed of innovation. It's impossible, whatever. And there's a funny story behind this museum as well, is that we present futuristic things in this museum, and I see Laith sitting here, who's one of our leaders at the museum. He left us and he just joined us today, so good to see you again, my friend. So we had a challenge where we discussed how can we really change the content in the museum to remain future relevant. And I always tell my friends and folks at the Louvre and other museums, I say that you guys are so lucky, because if this is at the Louvre, as good as the Louvre is, but if this is worth X, 3 years from now, this is worth maybe 100X. So all they got to do is just sit back and enjoy the appreciation of the displays that they have. Whereas in this museum, whatever is worth X is probably worth 0 in 2 weeks. So that's why we need to figure out a way where we constantly change our immersive experience to be future relevant. With technology, I think it's the same. It's way too fast. The fourth industrial revolution is much faster than the previous revolutions. And it will only get faster with supercomputers and advancement of robotics and AI. So the quantum speed of change will only get faster. So it's about how can you create a safe but robust environment to actually test those ideas. It's obviously easier said than done, but what we do here in Dubai, we have regulation labs, we have a sandboxing system. And
can I interrupt you? Can you please tell everybody what the sandbox system is?
Yes,
because
more than
you're
happy.
the only people doing this, and I think it's a phenomenal idea.
Happy to do so. So basically, the sandbox is an effort to really create a safe ecosystem for any innovation to be tested, whether it's a tangible, autonomous drone delivery solution, all the way to a using blockchain for land acquisition, for example. Can it actually be done? So it works for both. How do you get to our earlier point? How do you get the policymakers, all the stakeholders relevant? If I go back to the drone delivery, do you get the civil aviation? Do you get the police? You get the road and transportation? You get the entrepreneur in the room? You get the government officials all in the room, and you create a time frame for this effort, and you simply test it in a safe environment. Because the last thing you want, going back to your first point, there's obviously the biggest risk in fast advancement is that you make those mistakes. But when you have those risk-mitigated, safe zones to test, clubbed with an agile government that would take those pilots and make them policies, that's how you move as fast as you can to create a very agile ecosystem. But having said that, you'd still, in my humble opinion, would never be at par with the speed. It's how much you create a smaller delta between your regulation and the actual innovations out there. If the gap is huge, you're not doing so well. If the gap is small, it means that you're doing a great catch-up game to catch up with the latest innovation that's coming up. And this is what we try to do.
So I think there's an insight worth all of you taking back, even if you don't work in the public sector. You know, if we look at regulation in the United States, it is way after the fact. So it is, you know, develop, 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 go, 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 and then regulation sort of comes way afterwards, and then there are lawsuits. We see something different in Europe, which is regulate first, with apologies to my European friends, but you know this is true. There's regulation first, and then sort of tech tries to figure out, or in science, how to fit itself in. What I like about what you're describing is that really both should sort of go hand in hand, because ultimately regulation is a look back. It's very hard to regulate forward. So ideally what you want is a public-private sector cooperation where everybody's trying to sort this out together, which helps innovation and make sure that tech and science is being developed for the good of everybody.
Absolutely. And a relevant question to you, Amy, it's similar, but are you more of in the pace of technology adoption, are you more on the cautious side or on the fast and furious?
So that's a good question. I think, let me put it this way. I spend almost all of my time with CEOs of very large corporations around the world and government leaders. For the most part, what I am not seeing is an abundance of caution or a desire to be fast and furious, but this horrible space that I like to call the tyranny of fear and FOMO. And leaders are either making decisions at this point based on fear or the fear of missing out. So what that describes is not an intentional decision to be cautious and measured, or an intentional decision to lead, but this horrible place where, because of a lack of strategic foresight and methodical planning, everybody feels constantly caught off guard. I am not of the belief that you should go fast and break things. I think going fast and the breaking part of breaking things is a lack of modeling, and you can absolutely model things in advance. So I think the best approach going forward is about having as much information as you can, building models, simulating outcomes, which requires data, like I said, and modeling, and then thinking through implications. And I think we could all afford probably to go, especially in large corporations, to go a little faster.
Yeah.
And for consumers and some leaders to measure their expectations about what should be where and when.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, to your point about regulation across continents, for us, we keep on hearing the continuous. We should collectively, whether it's about AI or whether it's about data, whether it's about climate. So I think the biggest concern is always, and you talked about continents, and we're talking about a small country here that's trying to be agile as well, but we also know that one hand doesn't clap, and we need kind of a collaboration to ensure that those, the unification of those policies, is this a dream or is this something that's actually achievable, is the challenge.
Yeah, I don't know if you agree with this or not, but I think somehow technology has become a shorthand for artificial intelligence lately. And artificial intelligence, what people mostly mean is automating versus what AI actually is and can do. You know, and just because you have not you already know, but just because some people have an awareness now of AI doesn't mean that it itself is new. It's been in some form of development for an extraordinary long time, and it is a long horizon technology. So again, part of this is, again, I think it's really important. It's hard to stay on top of things because the world is more complicated, but the reality is that the more information you have, the better choices and decisions you're going to be able to make.
Absolutely, absolutely.
All right, I have a fun, I think this is fun for me, probably may not be fun for you. Let me ask you this question. Privacy and surveillance. Are you concerned, or are you like, yes, take my data?
It's truly fun for me. No, I mean, whenever anyone asks me this question, I kind of put things into perspective and I see how I have evolved with this kind of data thing. And maybe looking at my level of acceptance when it comes to data sharing, I feel like I'm gradually easing off on this. And I think many people of you, actually, let me have a raise of hands. How many of you store their data on cloud with Apple?
What about your hand is not up or down?
Oh, mine is with them for sure. Yes, yes.
Now
yes.
we all know.
Yes, so that's my, so what was that like probably?
That
50?
was basically everybody.
Okay, so you have, I'm sure if I asked you this question 5 years ago or 6 years ago or even more, this would have been no way. And this was me. There's no chance I would have put my data in the hands of anyone else but myself. So now everything is there. I feel, I don't know if it's the right thing. I don't know if you agree, Amy, but I'm telling you, it's our nature to sometimes gradually accept things. And I have a feeling with the heavy involvement of technology in our lives, this is something that we will naturally accept because whether we like it or not, data is the fuel for the advancement of technology. So the short answer is I feel like I will head towards here is my data, but my biggest concern, and everyone knows here, and this sounds like a broken record to many of the people that I met here, is my concern is not the data, my concern is the health and well-being of people. Maybe, I mean, I'm going off script with this, but I think this is the biggest concern for me, is how much we're really extracting value of technology, AI, and robotics, and how amazing our kids are in front of the screens. And I see Nada here, she's probably heard this 6,000 times from me, but I think the mental and physical well-being of our people in the future is probably the thing that we really need to pay attention to, given this involvement of technology.
So as long as we're off script, I actually have a separate question for you. So we both have kids.
Yes.
So are you concerned about your family's phone use
yes,
and privacy?
Yes, 100%. So absolutely. I mean, and this dilemma of having a screen time is definitely something that I'm still unable to hack and understand. I see that the amount of data and content they digest from an iPad is unbelievably amazing, and I get amazed by the level of knowledge and understanding. But at the same time, I see this tenseness when you try to pull out the tablet away from them. I see their social skills dropping down. I see them less active. I see them less comfortable to interact with one another. And we haven't even, Amy, scratched the surface on how much this digital world is going to have an impact on us. I mean, we're talking about AI doing everything for us. Mm-hmm. Us having, I mean, they talked about the premium of human capital and for face-to-face interactions to be so valuable because of the involvement of technology. So don't get me wrong, I'm in an entity that focuses on technology and the future, and I love it, and I think it'll have a big say in our lives. But I also love us, and I think we need to take care of us.
So I think you know this about me. A lot of people are surprised. So I have a 14-year-old girl, and up until 2 months ago, and it was only because of a school project, she did not have a phone. She's one of 4 holdouts in the 8th grade class that did not have a phone, and we only reluctantly agreed to give her one because of a very complicated science project. And even then, we provisioned a network in our house, so she has her own network, but it is very firewalled. So she has unfettered access to go to like 3 websites that we have approved. And I will tell you, my kid is incredibly patient. She does not feel bullied. She doesn't feel insecure. She has spent a lot of time doing other things. Now, there's a drawback. She doesn't know all the TikTok dances.
Okay.
So there's like cool things that she doesn't know anything about, but she is so confident.
But that's an important point. How does she catch up with everyone?
It is so.
Not the dancing specifically, but I mean in general, like with the yeah.
So she's going to do fine as an adult, but it's a good question, and it's a trade-off, because as a teenager, you want to fit in and be cool, and there are some times when she can't do that because she doesn't have the knowledge. She's like an alien who's jetted in. But I think in the long term, we're making the right choice, but it's a controversial one.
So if you talk to all the technologists and the futurists, you always see that the screen time is almost, limited. Do you have an ideal screen time that you think is ideal at certain ages, so I can take notes?
In our case, we've actually never had to limit her. She self-limits. She's got a house. She wants to be a lunar architect, so she spends all of her time thinking about space, and she's got other things. But we never gave her unfettered access. We never sat down with her eating dinner and gave her an iPad. We, talked to her. So I don't know. My assumption is limiting is probably better because it's forcing your brain to fire up in different ways.
Yes.
So if you only do one thing, it's probably also not good to only ever read books and not do anything else, right? You want a balance.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for that. Amy, I'd ask you, because I know we're running out of time, so I'd ask you the final question. How should we balance optimism and realism when planning for the future?
So I think this is my point of view, and certainly the point of view of my company. When planning for the future, we never start from the point of utopia or dystopia. We usually don't even use those terms. We're pragmatists, and we've heard since the start of this, the future is what you make it based on your choices, which is interesting, but which is true. So from our point of view, it's an easy thing to balance because you should be starting from the point of what we know to be true today, what we think could be extrapolated from what we know, and what we desire the future to be. Optimistic for you, utopian for you, maybe dystopian for me. So it's about figuring out a way to make choices that really is in the best interest of moving all of humanity forward. I don't know, what are your thoughts?
No, I think, given the environment that we're in at the moment, obviously, we're filled with optimism, we're filled with excitement. We've always, we're surrounded here by leaders that always want us to be positive about things. We understand, of course, the risks behind all the advancements of technologies and the risks that we're facing across other sectors. But I think the key component for us is really how to flip those opportunities and challenges, and create those opportunities. And one thing I think we learned from our leaders is that failure will always be part of the journey. And it's how you actually take that failure and look at it simply like a venture capitalist, and look at it as a pivoting moment, as a learning curve, and what can you do about it. I've been on many panels, Amy, where many people have spoken about Dubai and the UAE, and they always say the biggest, the largest, the shiniest, and I've done many of those panels outside, within the US and beyond. And people tend to not realize that what they see as an output is actually the success stories, but we have made so many mistakes, and we have gone through pivoting moments in many projects that we have worked on that haven't even seen light. But I think I've personally been in many projects that actually didn't go through. But the experience we learned made us be part of other massive projects, because we've been enabled through an environment that's entrusted us, that has empowered us, of course, to put, risk mitigation processes to ensure that the health and safety of the people as a priority. But when projects don't go through, it's not the end of the world. And if you have that kind of a mindset, you really have the courage to jump into new ideas. So I have to be optimism with the environment that I am personally surrounded by. But at the same time, to your point, I think this is a global issue. It's a global challenge. It's something that we need to work jointly on together. And if you ask any of those, speakers all over the world, we had a chat with, once Sam Altman was live in the World Government Summit, and he was asked, what is one thing that you want to be changed to ensure that AI is solved for in the best way possible. And he said just to simply have a platform that gets us all together to really come up with. So the answer is not really complicated, and the message is clear. And every forum you go to, you hear, whether it's Davos or whether it's the forum or whether it's the World Government Summit, it's the same words: fragmented world, collective, unity, and it's the same thing. And this is really what we need to solve for climate, to solve for AI, to solve for the metaverse, and to solve for all the challenges that we have. The more we sit together like we are today, the better the outcome will be.
I love the fact that you brought back the metaverse from the dead.
It's still alive,
Very
in my
exciting.
opinion. It's still alive. I think the metaverse is actually internet on steroids, and this is what's going to happen in the future. Well, Amy, first of all, I mean, I have to say I'm always honored to be with you, sharing a panel with you, and I thank you, and I'll use this platform to thank you again for being with us. And hopefully, I mean, we take this relationship from strength to strength, and I'll take this chance again to thank each and every one of you that survived with us until this time. And like I said, you are the fuel of Dubai Future Foundation, because every single conversation here that is mentioned is noted and hopefully does something that is for the betterment of humanity. So thank you very much. Thank you.
الحضور الكريم، الآن مع كلمة رئيسية بعنوان كيف تخدم التكنولوجيا